Hi everyone. In this video, we'll begin discussing the grid array, which is the first type of array we're introducing. To start, let's create a new pattern and ensure grid is selected here so its settings are displayed. There are three modes for determining item size: count, ratio, and size. We'll begin with count. This mode directly sets the number of items using fixed values. You define how many items should appear along the X or Y axis. The second mode is ratio. It determines item size as a percentage of the total width or length. For example, if the ratio is 15%, the item will take up 15% of both the width and the length. So, if we change the ratio to 50%, the space will be divided in half, resulting in 2 items. The third mode is size. Here, you define the item dimensions explicitly. For example, if you set the item to 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters, the system will distribute as many items as possible across the available width and length. So when should you use count, ratio, or size? Ratio isn't used as often. The most common and practical options are count and size. Use count when you want a fixed number of items, regardless of their size. The main benefit is that the item count remains constant, even if the overall area changes. For instance, if you choose 6 items along the x-axis, it will always generate 6 items, whether the area is large or small. In contrast, size mode keeps the item dimensions consistent, regardless of the total area. This ensures the items remain, for example, 50 centimeters wide, regardless of the available space. The downside is that if the area is large, it could result in too many items, making the pattern heavy and potentially slowing down 3ds Max. Each mode offers different strengths depending on the situation. Ratio mode also locks the percentage regardless of area size. If set to 50% of the width, it stays at 50%, whether the space is wide or narrow. It's similar to count mode, but allows you to set minimum and maximum ranges, just like size mode. This is helpful for introducing random variation. Now let's take a closer look at count mode. You simply define how many items to generate along the X and Y axes. The X expression and Y expression fields control the relative sizes of these items. You can enter values like 1, 2, or 2.5, separated by spaces. For instance, typing 1, 2 creates a repeating pattern of items with a 1:2 size ratio along the x-axis. This makes it easy to build panel designs, such as one larger piece followed by several smaller ones. The same applies to the y-axis. Moving on to size mode, you can set different minimum and maximum values for width and length to create random sizes. The randomness is controlled using the seed parameter. You can also lock values to make them uniform. There's a feature called force equals. When enabled, it ensures all items are the same size along the X or Y axis. If disabled for X, for example, the last item might be a different size. This is useful for patterns like flooring or tiling, where not all pieces need to be identical. The same logic applies to Y. Ratio mode uses identical settings, but the values are interpreted as percentages instead of fixed sizes. Back in count mode, you can click Invert to reverse the expression order or Reset to restore the default values. Below the specific mode settings, you'll find general parameters: scale, spacing, and rows offset. These options are available in all modes. Scale adjusts the size of all items. If X and Y are locked and the scale is set to 50%, every item is reduced to half its original size. This is a convenient way to resize everything, even when using random values, because it simply multiplies the dimensions by a factor. Spacing controls the distance between items along the X or Y axis. It's locked by default, but you can unlock it to assign different values. For example, 5 centimeters for Y and 1 centimeter for X. Next is row offset, which shifts every other row, such as the second, fourth, and sixth. For instance, if your items measure 25 centimeters by 25 centimeters and the offset is 12.5 centimeters, it creates a staggered pattern. You can also set minimum and maximum values to introduce random variations per row. There's also Y offset, which moves rows downward along the Y-axis. This is especially useful for patterns like hexagonal grids. Without Y offset, you couldn't align the rows to form a proper hexagonal arrangement. You can tweak the X offset and shift the alternating rows downward with the Y offset to achieve this. Lastly, the random seed parameter controls the randomization of the X row offset when using a range between minimum and maximum values. By changing the seed, you can generate different staggered variations along the X-axis. That wraps up our overview of the grid array settings. In the next videos, we'll go through the remaining array types. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.